Nej, det gör de svårt. I'm going to sit down. I'm sitting down all day.
Okay, wow, this is really good. Yeah. So for the ones that don't know me, hi, I'm Franca, and I'm really excited that so many of you came. Welcome to the Svalbard Guide Conference. It's the third time we're running it, and then there was a little bit of a break, of course, because COVID didn't make it possible that we all can meet. And why are we doing this? In general, every year, of course, guides come up to Svalbard and they work for different companies. And usually you arrive, you head into your guide seminar, you go to work, and you never talk to any other guide than the one that you work with. So our goal is to connect you guys, because that's sort of the essential part about Svalbard is that when we're out in the field, we help each other, we support each other, we talk about dangerous places, things we've seen. And if we don't know each other, we don't do that. So we hope today we can get you all a bit together, maybe get out of your little bubble, talk to the other ones right next to you, and say hello, and just make sure that it's not them, the other companies, but all together, we are all guides working on Svalbard. So the idea is that we find a place where we can socialize a bit more and hang out, share information, but also knowledge, maybe even training programs, education, all those kind of things. And why am I doing this? Because I'm part of the Svalbard Guide Association. We were founded in 2018, so some time back. And we have been working with different topics, but mainly anything that have any interest to the guides. And we're trying to connect the guides to either the Sysselmesteren, Lokalstyret, Visit Svalbard, ECO. We're trying to connect you guys to education if we can. And also one big important part is, of course, we're connecting you to your union, which is Handel-Kontor, HK, if you need help at the workplace. So that's kind of how it all started. We wanted to connect you guys. It's a bit hard on Svalbard because people come and go all the time. So this is how we started. And I just going to quickly show you a little bit who we are, what we do, and we go from there. So we are the first representative of Svalbard's Guides community, and yes, as we said, we are connecting people, so we work as an intermediate in between bodies. We are not a union. That's very important when we talk to companies, so companies are not afraid of us. We are not a union, someone else will do that, and we are trying to transfer information. And very important for us in all of that is, of course, that we are protecting the guides, we are protecting nature, and also we help you with education and so on. And one of the main important things that we realize that, of course, the profession of guiding is not yet really internationally recognized as a profession. So we're working towards that as well to get respect, maybe. We are still sometimes searching in society. And I mentioned already that we are working together. That is a little bit of a challenge. And I already want to say now that the Svalbard Guide Association has suffered heavily through COVID, as everyone else. And it's only two who run it at the moment. And that's Sylvia and me. And if you like what we did today, we would really invite you to approach us and maybe find a little topic that you like and you want to help us with. It's a lot of work, but if we all share it, it's actually just small parts that can come together. And it's really important work, because right now is the time that we as a guiding community need to speak up. So Sysselmesteren and the government in Oslo, they are discussing guide certification. I will talk later about it, and that's a really important topic. So if we don't speak up now, we might miss a huge opportunity to become something with a voice. But maybe from here, I just hand over to Marius already. As you saw, and I apologize for that, there's no pizza. It was a trick. No, it wasn't a trick. We actually really aimed to have pizza tonight, and they called us yesterday and said that they cannot serve pizza. For whatever reason, either they saw it as a guide meeting and they don't like us and then they decided not to have pizza. No, we think something happened in the kitchen, so they maybe don't have, maybe the oven broke or something, so they said we provide you something else. So please help yourself, eat, and let us know if something is empty. And yeah, again, thank you so much for coming. And I think Marius will take over.
Hi, everyone here stay okay? Do I have to use no microphone? Very good. My name is Marius. I come from the union, the HK. I'm going to talk a little bit about rights and duties in the workplace. Made absolutely no difference. It doesn't matter. I've been working with Bianca and Guide Association since they started. We've been cooperating with these types of conferences, and we've also been discussing other issues along the way over the years. Unfortunately, it all collapsed during COVID. We're very happy now to start again cooperating and working here on Svalbard with guides and in cooperation with the Guide Association. A little bit about us. The union is called HK Norway. We're the third largest union in LO. LO is the largest sammenslutning federation of unions in Norway. Almost 1 million members in total in LO. We have 78,000 of those members. We're organized in 7 regional offices for the northern parts of Norway. Our main office is in Tromsø, and I'm the leader in the Tromsø office. I have 6 employees in Tromsø who work with issues like this, but the responsibility for Svalbard is with me, and I'm the person that you will talk to and get help if you have something you want to discuss regarding issues in your workplace. I've set this agenda. I was thinking, I came yesterday with a plane because I couldn't get a ticket for a quick day. So I had a lot of time working with the presentations. I was sitting and thinking, okay, one of the issues when we have presentations regarding rights and duties in the workplace is that we have a focus here. Very high focus on the rights, not so much focus on the duties, because it's mainly here we, like explain, you have a right to this, and right to that, right to that. And I'm not sure if I've succeeded. I've tried to maybe also focus a bit more on the duties you have in the workplace, because those things are dependent on each other. And I will, of course, take some important elements as the contracts, health and safety, working hours, and a little bit about if you have issues and disagreements, what you can do, how you can solve these issues. It's the youngest guy on Svalbard. Yeah, so this presentation takes the Working Environment Act and kind of drawn out some important bits, and everything is based on this law. And also some of it is based on common sense. And common sense is a big part of the Working Environment Act. So you have some regulations that's based on common sense. So what is right is not easily defined, but you have to think, okay, what should be right, if that makes sense. I'm not sure. I will start with duties. So the employer has some duties and the employee has some duties. The main issue is, the main thing is that the employer needs to ensure that the regulations and rules given by the law is followed. And they have a duty to care for their employees, to take care of them, their well-being, their safety, all these things. Those are the duties of the employers. And the employee has a duty to cooperate with the employer in health and safety work, and they have a duty to act loyally towards the employer's goals and issued orders. So in other words, you have to do within reason what your employer tells you to do. You have to show up to work on time, do the work within the standards that the employer sets, and like correct if there are some issues. These are the main things. I forgot to say, if there's any questions, I prefer we take them as we go, so just interrupt us during the presentation. Because if we like save them, we often forget what we wanted to ask. So you can ask anything and everything relating to regulations and issues. So these are the main things, and if the employer does what he's supposed to do and the employee does what they are supposed to do, everything will be perfect and fine. But oftentimes we see that there are like unclear what the expectations are between the employers and the employees. Maybe the communication isn't good enough for like stating this is what I expect from you. And then there can like come issues and trouble that has to be sorted out. I will get to that in the end when those situations occur. Because everyone knows that most of the time everything is good. Sometimes things can come up, and we have to have good systems to figure out those issues. So we don't have like war and conflict in workplaces. Because that's in no one's interest. Businesses don't make any money, employees get sick maybe. It's very bad. And then you have the rights. So you have a right to have a contract that states the relevant issues to the working employment. You have a right to work according to that contract. So when you have made this contract saying, I will sell this much of my time to this company, you have a right to work those hours. And you have a right to payment, and you have a right to overtime pay. And there are other rights as well, but these are like the main big ones. I think it's important to have clear. I don't know if you know this, but also the pictures are from the internet to make it interesting to watch. Normally we have like this big white one, and we have many points of text and many points of text. Now I need to have some pictures. And try to make pictures relevant. Not sure there's that much trees here in Svalbard, but you get the picture. That one is Tromsø. It's Finlandsfjellet, Tromsø. Very good. Yeah. So we can just start with the contracts. And this is the standard issue contract from Arbeidstilsynet, the governing office for workers and things. They are not sure how you say it in English, but they control that everything is okay with regards to health and safety, working hours, stuff like that. A public office. They don't do anything with if you think that you are getting too little pay or if you get terminated from employment. Don't have anything to do with that. But that you have a contract, that the contract is okay, that is Arbeidstilsynet. That's like follow on. And they can make like instructions to companies if there are something that's not right with regards to contracts or working hours or stuff like that. where we go in and make vedtak and Orlag. It's the Norwegian words. So I will instruct the company to sort out the issues that are. The important things in the contract is that it defines the general understandings between the worker and the employer. With that, we mean how much will you get paid for your work, how many hours, or what big position is 100%, or you can say 20 hours a week, or you can say 40 hours a week, or you can say just 100%. Doesn't matter how you define it, but you have to define it in a way that both parties know what to expect. You have some, especially important here on Svalbard, because Svalbard isn't, the vacation laws don't apply here on Svalbard. So if you have,
from this year.
oh, they do know.
First.
Very good. Then we can remove the question mark. Because previously you had to state in the contract that you were following the vacation laws. But now everyone is, that's very good. Very good. And other specific relevant conditions agreed upon. It could be whatever, but it has to be like things that are important for the employment has to be stated in the contract. And it doesn't have to be very concrete. You can like say that you have to work according to these plans or something like that, but at least in a way that both parties know what to expect of each other. This is the formal statement of expectations. Look at it. Type of position you have could be, in some, most of you probably would just be guide, I think, or something like that, but it could also be like boating guide or other types of more specific positions in the company you can have. And it's important that it's not too narrow, I think, because then it will be like you can't do other things. But it has to be like, set a framework for what is to be expected in your position. So if you're a guide, then that is like the frame of what they can expect you to do. If they can't set you off to do cleaning work for a whole summer, that's not a guide. So it establishes some outer bounds of what an employer can instruct within limits of the contract. You have to state if there are any specifics regarding the notice period for termination. So you have the minimum period, which is 1 month, but you can make agreements that says 3 months, 4, 5, 6 months for terminations. And it goes both ways. So if you want to quit your job, you have to respect the notice period, and the employer, if he wants to terminate the contract, has to respect the notice period. It has to state whether it's a temporary position or a permanent position. And if it's a temporary position, it also has to state on what grounds it is a temporary position. So in this case, it would be like seasonal work, could be basis for temporary position. But it has to give the reason, because the law says that positions are supposed to be permanent unless there is some specific reason for it not to be. And also if there are anything regarding breaks that goes beyond what it says of the 30-minute break in working. So that's the contract. And it's very important that the contracts are used, that everyone has a contract, and that the contracts are correct according to what is agreed upon and what is expected of each of the parties. And always when we get like these cases with misunderstandings or issues arising, especially in regards to pay or working hours and stuff like that, we always go to the contract to say, okay, what did you agree upon in the contract? And we use that as a basis to see, okay, you say that you need this pay, but you agree to work for another pay. So you have to follow up on what you agreed, or you have to negotiate and get a new agreement. And it's important that you update the contract if there are changes in your position. So for example, if you change your type of position or you get higher wages, you should also get this in the contract to eliminate any possibilities for misunderstandings or issues occurring. This one is a bit more like we make them. It has a lot of more text, but a cuter picture. I brought this in because I saw that there was a lot of safety things. That's going to be a theme here on the conference. And I think it's important to know that as an employee, you have a right to notify about censorable conditions. I had to Google censorable because I didn't understand it, but it's what we call in Norwegian kritikkverdige forhold. And those are if there are something that's a danger to health, life, climate, the environment, corruption, abuse of authority, unsatisfactory working environment, or breach of personal data. Then you have a right to notify your employer. So it could be both issues regarding the company you are working for. It could be stuff that the main leadership or the guys on the very top doesn't know about that is going on further down the organization. You have a right to notify, and then the employer has to do its research, find out what is this, and start with, what's the word? Tiltak. Yeah. Some setting on tiltak. Yeah, intervene or has to do something about it. And it's very important, I think, especially here on Svalbard, because there is risk to what you are doing, taking people out to the nature there. And you have to notify if there is danger to life and health or these things, so people can do something about it. I don't think there's bad will. Like, very rarely you have cases here, corruption or economic crime. I haven't had any of those cases in the 10 years I've been working in HK. But it could be situations occurring that you have to notify your employer about, that they need to know about. So they can do something about it. And this is the general requirements regarding the working environment is more about this duty to care for your employers. So the working environment has to be satisfactory and take care of the employer's health, both physical and psychological health, so that there aren't any negative impacts on employees' health. So it's very important. And if there are any issues there, it could be that you have to do this, but that's only in the most serious cases. Most of the time you just talk to your closest leader and say, the way we are doing things are, we have to do something about it, this and this happens, or stuff like that. So this is for serious things. This is more for the general working environment, things like that. Then we have this working hours. I know it's an issue here on Svalbard with the way tours, some of the tours, at least the long tours, over many days in the, out in nature. It's difficult to abide these limits very good. So the law states that 40 hours a week, 9 hours a day is the limitations for regular working hours. And exceeding the limits is regarded as overtime and has to be paid with 40% compensation. And then you can also average calculate the working hours so that over a period of time you can work a bit more as long as that the average is within the limits. And you have to have off-duty time, so the rest time should be 11 hours or 35 hours and never below 8 hours or 28 hours during the week. And if you go below the regular 11 hours or 35 hours, you need to have some compensating rest arrangement. It doesn't state what it has to be, but it could be like you get the time some other day, or you compensate for it some way. You make agreements to get this working. Yeah. So the definitions are also interesting because so off-duty time is the time you are at your own disposal, and working hours are the time when you are on the disposal of your employer. But if you are 50 kilometers in the snow, how can you not be at the disposal? And I remember having a discussion with Arbeidstilsynet about this, because it's difficult to be at your own disposal completely. But I think in this case you have to say that, okay, if you have your defined I'm not working time, even if you're out in the field, then you have to regard it as your off-duty time, because there's no other possible way to solve it. And it's important that there are discussions in the companies regarding how these limitations can be followed as best as possible to avoid disagreements about overtime pay or stuff like that. So make agreements in advance, know what you have agreed upon, and live by these rules as best you can. And sometimes it will happen that the weather or stuff like that makes the trips longer or whatever. Then that's fine. These are not regulating the special conditions. These are the general conditions. I have this just because it could happen that there are something that makes either you as an employee or your employer wants to terminate the employment. And the only thing that you as an employee needs to worry about is if you want to terminate employment is the period of notice. So you have to follow what is agreed upon, or at least 1 month, and formal requirements. As you have to give your notice in writing, but it's not very strict for employees. If an employer wants to terminate the employment, then they need to have a consultation before the termination. In this consultation, you are entitled to have an advisor with you. We sometimes are used in these meetings as advisors. They have to follow the period of notice. They have to give the termination in writing, either directly by hand or by post. If there are errors in the formalities, then one of the consequences could be that invalidation of the termination, and they have to start the process all over again. You have a protection against unfair dismissal. called saklig oppsigelse in Norwegian. So there has to be a sound reason for an employer to terminate the employment. So it could be the simple things like downsizing the company. We don't need as many people working here anymore. Or it could be that you have violated the contract, not uphold your duties as a worker, things like this. And it's very important that the process is done very thoroughly and good to avoid possibilities of like you can end up here. If there is disagreements, you can go negotiate with the employer, and you can take the employer to court, in worst case. Yeah. Happily, we haven't had any unlawful terminations of employment cases as long as I can remember here on Svalbard. That's very good. So the most important things is that the expectations between employer and employee is clarified, that both parties know what to expect of each other, that they use written contracts and regulations. Could also be like personalhandbok, rule sets, field rules or stuff you have. Have things in writing to minimize the risk of disagreements. And remember that the employment is both the duties and the rights. Do not focus mainly on the rights. And don't assume things. Oftentimes you see issues arising from, I thought that I was going to get this if I did that, but I hadn't checked with my employer what we had agreed upon. Yeah, I thought if I work this Sunday, I would get extra pay or whatever. So if you stop assuming things like this, just check. Okay, is there anything regarding this that I need to know before we do it? Will there be extra pay? Stuff like this, so that you don't come after you have done it and say, but I thought I was going to get overtime pay for this. I didn't get it. Why? You need to know this in advance. So just ask. I think it will be better both for employees and employers if they talk and communicate better about these things to minimize the possibilities of issues, cases arising. So if the issues and disagreements come up, then you have to follow the chain of leadership. It's my translation, I'm not sure if it's correct. I meant to say tjenestevei, but you have to try and sort out the issues on the lowest possible level, is the idea. Many times our members call us directly with some issue they have and say, okay, I need this and this and this. And we always start with asking, okay, but have you talked to your boss or your leader about this? No, they haven't. Okay, then I think you should do that before involving the union in the case. So try to sort out the issues on the lowest possible level in the organization. So your closest leader, and if they can't sort it, just move it up. And if there is a conclusion and you still haven't come to agreement, then we can be involved in the cases, and we can be asked for help. We have this special system here on Svalbard because most of the time we have some waiting period before you get help. But since the guides here on Svalbard are mostly seasonal workers, or a lot of seasonal workers, then they haven't had the chance to be a member for the waiting period. So we have a system where we disregard the waiting period for the guides here on Svalbard, and you can get immediate help after joining the union, even without having the 3-month currency, as we call it. So you can ask us for help, contact us. Our only requirement is that you are a member. And you get all the legal rights that we have, even the use of attorneys if needed. That's a very good offering. That's that. That's all I had. I hope it was, hope you learned something, and thank you for your attention.
That there's actually some companies represented as well, which is great, so thank you for that. And we also have a journalist joining us today. I don't know if you want to say a few words while you're here, and thank you for joining.
Okay, hello. I'm Alex Rüder from Munich, Germany, from the Süddeutsche Zeitung, which is a nationwide newspaper in Germany. And I heard some rumors about that the Norwegian government is not so friendly with the foreigners here in Svalbard. And I wanted to know more about it, and that's why I'm here for 4 or 5 days. And I'd be more than glad if some of you spoke to me about your experiences. It's me, perhaps the easiest for you to about it.
Yeah, you can contact either anyone. Yeah. And I think we go ahead with.
I'm a bit nervous because I'm used to talking in front of guests, but not in front of colleagues. So please bear with me. And I was asked to talk a little bit about possible dangers and danger points, especially when we head out. Can you guys hear me in the back? Yeah. Okay. So I will show you a lot of maps with a lot of red dots and quite some GPS points. And if you know them, I hope I don't bore you, but if you don't know them, feel free to take pictures, to put them in your GPS, to play around with them, go there, check it out yourself. And I really would like to invite all of you to have this open conversation about areas we found difficult in the field, or where we had an accident because of some terrain issues. So close to Longyearbyen we have a few. We have, of course, the known windholes in Bødalen, on the way to Aktovskyfjellet on the very right. We don't go further, do we? We have a minute. And then, of course, also close to Fardalsbakken, when you drive down and a little bit further, there's again this windhole just basically on the track. So many of those points are on the track, so be careful with that. And also some things many people don't know about that is under the Lashbrennen, under the moraine. There should be a lot of caves and a lot of holes. So also when you just go there and walk there, just be careful. Yeah, I allowed myself to steal this picture from the Facebook group from last summer. It was posted, I believe, because I think it shows really nicely one of the places we go very often. So this is Telbren. You see the black cross on the left map. And of course we all know this is the ice cave. We visit there. But also if we drive up the glacier, we have to cross it. And like all the other places in Svalbard, it's snow covered, but it's a huge drop. And just keep it as a rule not to drive along it, but just cross it very fast. But I really think this picture shows really nicely how divided the glacier is in 2 parts, so take care around that. Yeah, and then when you go towards Barentsburg, there are a lot of points. I just put in a few. And we know, most of you guys who have been here a few years know about the cave down here with the avalanche the lava one that happened. And the whole glacier down there has to be treated with kind of cautious because of all the crevasses down there. And then when you drive to Svalbard, it doesn't matter if you take the coast or the inland route, you will come along drops along snow drifts, and either of them can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So most of us, I think, will go towards Tempefjorden in this direction, especially this season, with not visiting Barentsburg or Pyramiden. Yeah, most of those points are not on the main tracks, but if you just drive a little bit off it. So, for example, the viewpoint down here, if you drive down it just straight to the north, you will have a jump of 10-20 meters. And of course, the wind hole, if you go up to Fredheim, also if you just drive from Eskedalen into Sassen, take care of the wind drift because they are on the main track, or nearly on the main track. Yeah. So even on the tracks we drive every day might be difficult. And I think most of you guys are experienced, but some are new and small, and maybe it's always good to talk about those things. One story I really like about Bratlidalen. You know Bratlidalen, this valley here? I heard a story of a colleague who went there, and he had some trouble with some guests coming off the scooter. So other guests already walked in the front, and then he walked into the valley, the guests a little bit in the front. And then at the end of Bratlidalen, there was a polar bear. And luckily, the bear did not run towards the guests, but up and out on the other side, on the small valley that is there. So really lucky one that nothing got happened, but polar bears can be everywhere. And this season, they've been spotted on Rabotbreen. I've seen it myself somewhere around here at the beginning of the season. Fredheim, there are a lot of tracks, so just be careful when you guys go in known area. The polar bears, they really can surprise us everywhere, even on a far glacier high up when you would think like, the seals are down there, what should we do up here? Yeah, just keep it in mind, especially if you walk into gullies. In our company, we have the strict rule, if we go into Bratlidalen, we always take our rifle with us. I think that's a good thing to have things like that. So let's go to the East Coast. And that's the main track to the East Coast, the usual track. Of course, you can take other routes. And some GPS points. And as always, the Meltwater channel, just when you come down Königsbrunn towards the fjord, drive the loop around it. Don't shortcut because of the Meltwater channel. But don't drive around it too much either, because on the other side, there's another danger. At this point over here, you have a satellite picture over there. That's from last August. And you see how much the glaciers changed. I mean, now the sea goes all the way up to here, the glacier from the summer there. And then right here you have this crumbled ice. So just make sure that you not drive into that. And all of our glaciers, you know, they are changing so crazy fast over the last years. So we can just expect a lot of other changes in other areas too. And also they're retreating. So yeah, please check the satellite pictures. Not from Svalbard, they are very outdated, 10, 20 years old. Don't make that mistake, but from other sources. I will mention one source later we can use. Yeah, let's drive towards Pyramiden, to the north. And as always, we have Philipsbreen. And our main track goes basically around here. And the thing is, the crevasses are going in the same direction than we drive. So don't drive in the middle. I mean, this year we have a lot of snow. Most crevasses might be snow covered. When I drove to East Coast last time, I measured 3 meters of snow on the top at least, and 1.5, like halfway up, 1.5 meters. So it's okay this year, but still there are a lot of crevasses also in Lower Svalbard. Yeah, this picture I really like. On the right hand side, you see some GPS tracks I got from a GPS I got in town. And there are many tracks that we should not use on it. I marked them with the red circle. And if you shortcut to Pyramiden, or as this year we have to take the long way around to Ragnarbreen up here, never shortcut. Don't shortcut here, and don't shortcut here. Because in both places we have the crevasses. And if you have a track, an old track, which makes a shortcut, you might be in big trouble, because the crevasses, they have like the same direction as we would drive. So we would drive on top along the crevasse, which is never good, of course. So please be careful when you get old tracks, especially up in the north. Yeah, don't take those nice shortcuts to be a little bit faster down there. Yeah, then in general, I mean, many of you have AG or SGO or experience, yeah?
Maybe get the previous picture, please.
Yeah.
And there is a 2022 crevasse straight on the track, which
Yeah.
is between,
Yeah,
between
this one
those
here?
two circles. Yes, can we get a position of that one?
Yes, I can post it on the Svalbard Guide Association group.
Cool,
I
thanks.
don't know about this place myself, but it was posted last year on Facebook group, so I just added it in our GPSs. But I can post it for sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Some of those crevasses, you really have to stay on track. Like we see that every season over and over again, that there's a lot of tracks accumulating up on the plateau because it's nice and wide. But also if you use new satellite pictures, you can just mark the crevasses on your GPS and then you know where not to go. So you can have, it's sometimes not a lot of space, it's maybe 100 meters that you kind of have to not be in an area that you maybe should stay out depending on how much snow you have. But yeah, it's good to have those points, especially in whiteout.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, all of those points there, when you have good visibility there, like, yeah, nice to have, but when you're in a whiteout up there, it's very different. Yeah. This year we have a lot of snow, so maybe we should think a little bit more, especially about avalanches, of course, but also about snowdrifts and cornices, and just like, what if something like that on the right picture falls down? Or what if you drive down with your scooter here because you haven't seen it? So just, yeah, let's be careful and let's not have a bad accident this year. That would be nice. Yes. And also the crevasses and meltwater channels and the moulins and all of those things. Yeah, just be aware when you drive out. And yeah, I mean, we all like to speed, but maybe it's nice to sometimes take it a little bit slower. And I also stole this picture from the Facebook group because I think it really shows from last season. This glacier looks amazing. It looks perfect, nice snow, but yeah, scooters open up those crevasses. So yeah, don't take it too easy, even though we have a lot of snow. And often our tracks, they are just like going down here. This is, for example, Dinebukta. Yeah, one bay further south than Mumbukta. Our track goes down here and just drive a little bit through in there and you're in a big problem. So just, yeah, take it easy and slow and think about what we all are doing. Sometimes we see those crevasses a little bit under the snow. I really like this picture because, yeah, you see them of course on the left side, but also on the right you can kind of guess that there's something under the snow. So just keep an eye out for those things, of course. And this picture I also stole, not because of the crevasse, but because of the position of the snow, of the trailer on top of the snowmobile. So it's basically always when you fall down with a snowmobile, the trailer goes on top of us. So keep that in mind if you have a drop. If you drive with two guides, if you sled, if you only have one sled to the last guide, so something like that doesn't happen to you. Luckily, this accident was difficult to survive, but still keep it in mind. One other thing are the searching glaciers. And this map is a little bit old, a little bit outdated. But we of course have Nikkelbreen, which is searching Tunabreen, of course, quite some while ago. Down here some, I heard that Cockbreen started to search now, which is kind of inland here, in a non-scooter-free area. But one thing I want to mention about the searching, I mean, you all know what a searching glacier is, right? Like the glacier is just speeding down suddenly. And the thing is, it's not only this glacier that has all the crevasses, but every glacier that is somehow connected to this one too is kind of getting pushed down to or pulled down too. So the crevasses are not only on the searching glacier itself, but also on the connected glaciers to that one. So keep that in mind when you drive in areas close to searching glaciers, because you don't want to end up with a snowmobile or your guests on a searching glacier opening up crevasses. Yeah, sea ice. Another topic, interesting this year, really interesting, because we don't have any. This has been the East Coast last week, I think. So polar bears can walk on it, but we can't drive on it. So really be careful with that one, especially if it starts to freeze. Keep in mind, as always in Templefjord, the murder hole. You can see it actually from space on some days. I think that's super cool. Yeah, there's always weak ice and gases coming up, so don't drive over that. But if you drive over from Friedheim or Schulz, just drive straight over here into the valley. But avoid this area, as we're not allowed to drive there anyway. But also with skis. And then on the right side, there's a picture close to Svea, Familiefjord. And there's this other area with weak ice around here. So if you drive over it in a straight line, of course, take a long route around that one. There's another one in Dixenfjord, I heard. But I have to admit, I don't know where it is and what it is about, but I heard several times already that there should be another weak spot on Dixenfjord itself.
It's a straight line between Cap Smith and Cap Wheat. There's usually a little bit sketchy.
Yeah.
Just if you make a straight line between the two, that center area, because it's quite shallow.
Yeah.
If you look at the sea charts, you will see the shallow area.
Okay.
That's a good place to.
In that shallow area. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I brought a little bit the old sea ice charts from the last years. It's always around the 1st or 2nd of March. And this has been 2020. And 21 was not the good ice year, 22. And this is this year. So we have by far less than 2 years ago, where we thought we already had no sea ice. And Billefjord, between Rupert on the way to Bjørn is just starting to freeze over. So let's see if it's even possible right now to get to Bjørn. It should be quite tricky right now because you can't drive on the ice. And yeah, Templefjord is nothing. East Coast, nothing at all, which is quite rare. So let's see what happens if it freezes over, if we can drive on it at all this season. But keep it in mind that the ice in this chart is just built in the last 1 or 2 weeks, I think, not very much. But we have a lot of snow, a lot of avalanches. Especially if you drive to Barentsburg. There are at least 5 avalanches going over the track, and I've never seen something like that in the last 5 years here. And they're big avalanches, like huge ones, and you don't want to be hit by it. So really be careful, especially Todal, Gandal, Bjørn, those rallies. And also if you drive in other places, think about terrain traps. What if an avalanche gets triggered up in the mountain and you are driving down there with your scooters? Yeah, what is your plan then? So please keep all those things in mind. And yeah, I just hope that I had a few interesting things, a few interesting points for some of you. And this one here, I want to point out, I really like to play around with it because you can find satellite images from every specific day. Some days, of course, are cloud covered, but some are not. And then you really can get, yeah, the state of the glacier from that day. And yeah, I think all of the others, most of you know anyway. But it's just, yeah, keep in mind Svalbard is changing a lot, and yeah, we always have this confidence thing going on. If you're new in Svalbard, you're always like, oh my god, I have to be careful, it's so dangerous. Then after some time you're like, ah yeah, I know everything, I'm good, I can go. And then at one point you realize, shit, I don't know anything at all, and then you start to learn and to improve. So yeah, maybe judge yourself where you're right now, how confident all of us are in the field, and yeah, just try to avoid some bad accidents this year. But let's go out and explore and have fun. And yeah, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. So yeah, that was great. I think it was, yeah, there was a question.
Yeah, excuse me, you went insanely fast about all these tracks to not take with each point. Is it possible to have access to it?
Yes.
Yes, you
So
know, like-
we're going to do 2 things. We are filming.
Okay.
So we're going to post this online so you can look it up, but we can also give you the data like the GPS points and so on.
Okay.
But of course, always use judge it. It's an idea, it gives you the hints, but it doesn't mean it might be 100% correct. I would like to add something. This year it's probably not a big concern because it's so much snow, but Gröndalen, I don't know if some of you have been driving there with not so much snow. There are those nicely deadly poles. Please don't hit them. So like in other seasons when there's not so much snow, you have those metal poles that are all sticking up from the ground and the track was usually right on top of it. And I'm just waiting for the one scooter that hits it one day and in like 60 kilometers an hour. So be really aware of them. It's really nice at the beginning of the season to actually just mark them as well. So you're not ending up later on to maybe miss them and wipe out. So we have them also on the coast. From Barentsburg back to town, there's quite a lot of them broken off. So yeah, anything you see basically, I think the guide, the most value is your GPS. At the end of the season, you will have so many more very important points collected in it, and you need to keep that for the next season. And you need to add to it. It's that kind of your little Bible. Also in the summer, it doesn't really matter if you're a snowmobile guide or a boat guide. So we just said like bring a sea chart as well when you go snowmobiling, but it does definitely help to have a look at where are areas with shallow sea under. We have the same thing on the East Coast. If you're going, theoretically, if there would be sea ice, you also need to be quite aware of areas with a lot of overwater on the other side of Moonbukta, for example, but ask those questions your colleagues. If you don't have colleagues, ask other guides you know. Don't be shy to ask for help outside your company. Because there are companies that have maybe 2 guides employed because they're small, they're very small companies, very specialized, and then there are large companies with 15 guides or something. And take advantage of that. Yes.
Is there like a way of like sharing information? Like is that Facebook?
You can
page
use the Svalbard Guide Association for it, yeah, sure. Yeah. Like,
Or is that like the Facebook page that was how is it called? The avalanche, whatever.
you can use that, like the one that's kind of the one in town.
Yeah.
You can of course always, if you spot avalanches, use Marsum to report it. That's always super handy. But if you spot anything else, you can always post, like go on the Svalbard Guide Association page on Facebook. You can share information there. I don't see any danger in it because I think we all know how to take it in the right way. Has anyone else maybe something they want to share what they already seen this season?
Yeah, Franca, maybe at Svalbard brand, this huge metro channel, this season is so filled up with snow, so you don't see anything, but still it is there.
Which one?
In Svalbard brand, on the way to Lunebukta, that's a kind of So just it's a little bit harder to know where it is because it's so filled up, but it is there.
You can also mark that. Also, an advice, of course, I don't know if you guys know that, most of you will do, but if you go up to Fjordava, please do me a favor and don't do a certain turn up there. Don't turn left with your guests, please turn right. I always get a half a heart attack if I see big groups coming, and they all turn towards the opening, and you know where the throttle is and how guests behave. So sometimes, I don't know, I think Christian, you had an interesting encounter there once. So stuff like this, keep that in mind. And that maybe your guest does weird stuff and plan for impossible in that way. So there are certain areas where you're...
Can you hear me? Yeah? Good. My name is Tor. I work as the guide manager for Treacherous Svalbard. Done that 5 years and have previous experience guiding for 15 years. Nice, this is a nice picture. Just one thing regarding the previous session. I would also urge you to join the Governor's Hour, which is, I think, on the 14th.
Yes, 14th. They just announced it.
Yeah.
16th.
Because there they will show pictures from the overflight they do every year across the glaciers. And there's a lot of new things going on with the glaciers, and there are some new places that you should be aware of. So please sign up for that hour. I'm going to talk a little bit about statistics. Yeah. Which is fun. That's what we like to do in Snowmobile. I don't have any cool pictures, but maybe you'll find it interesting. We've done quite a lot of, we've done quite a lot of investigation into the incidents that we have, especially regarding snowmobiles. And it's quite interesting to see, like, snowmobiles obviously is our biggest activity, and to break up all the incidents in actually what kind of incidents do we have, and who creates the incidents, and what kind of incidents are there. So from last year, 2022, can you imagine what would be the biggest incidents with snowmobiles? Do you have any ideas?
Yes,
Yeah.
the light pole.
Start and end.
Huh?
The light pole, like the traffic light pole, not the light outside, maybe the first thing, the first obstacle.
First obstacle, yeah. When we are out in the field, what would be the typical incident? Parking. Any other options? Tipping. Tipping. So we've had last year 64 events that we managed to register, and of those 64, 30 we say are near incidents or tipping snowmobile without any damage. Meaning that the snowmobile tips for some reason, but you can just tip it back and you can continue driving. No harm done. 20 of those were damage to the snowmobile, meaning that it had to be repaired. And then we have 14 injuries on persons. So this is from our company. It's not like for the whole operators, but for ours. And then we had 5 guests that needed to go to the hospital, and we had 3 cases where we had the search and rescue involved. And of course, of those 14, like you can see, the same number will occur here. We had 14 person injuries. 5 of them had to go to the hospital, and then 3 of those we had to use rescue service. For you from the other companies, do you have any statistics over any of these? Do you do this?
Not officially.
Not officially. So this was last year. If we take a look at a wider period, if we go all the way back to 2015, again, the blue column is the events that we have registered, and then the yellow is near incidents that we talked about, tipping, and the same one with the other colors. So we can see that we had some major things happening here from 17 to 19. Could be from anything from the terrain, and the snow conditions, and the weather. But what we can see is that, of course, 2020, 2021, smaller numbers due to COVID, not that many tourists. But what is interesting is that we managed to keep like the incidents lower for each year. And we try as much as possible to register every little thing that we do.
question.
Yes.
The year, is it like the calendar year or is it the season, like 15 to 16, 16 to 17? I'm asking if the number.
Yeah, this will be the season.
Counting.
This will be like the season as it's involves snowmobiles.
Which starts in 2022.
Hmm?
Now, like this, the 22 is still ongoing, or is it like last year?
No, this is last year.
So it's 2022, 2023, it's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
So it's not on the list. So what started in December, it's not counted into 2022 yet. That makes sense.
Any revelations for you guys that do this on a daily basis?
Throughout the years, is your kind of like system for registering the events has changed at all, or is that because sometimes it's just that you can't compare because just different way of registering things?
Yeah,
So
I would say that from maybe 18, 19, we've been much better at doing this registering. Before it was maybe, or before my time, you maybe wouldn't register if you just had a tip with no damage. Just but from the past years, we've been trying to even register small incidents.
The first 2 or 3 seasons, there's definitely been an underrepresentation.
Yeah.
Also, question: since when are you using the app? Because I heard that you have an app
Yes.
that you used to register it. Since when did you use that?
I think that was from 2018.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But the form is the same. Things we fill in has been the same the whole time, except for
So what we do now is that we do the registration on an app, and then in addition we do it on paper.
Because I know, for example, I have seen some SGA guides, some Svalbard Adventures guides here as well, and we do have a form, just nobody fills it out. When I was working there, SGA. They have a form. It's somewhere hidden. You know, it's hard to find and not always works. So I think Treacherous is very good in collecting those data.
And especially what's good now is that we can use the app and we can do it immediately after it happens.
So maybe an encouragement for other companies to do the same. There's so much to learn from collecting that data.
But it would be interesting to have in relation the total amount of snowmobiles outside.
Yeah.
To really see if there's an improvement in quality or safety,
So here we have divided into categories. I will explain this because it's in Norwegian. But categories per guest from 15 to 22, total amount 31,812 guests. So we have the total amount of events here. We have only damage on snowmobiles. Then we have personal injuries. And again, guests going to the hospital. And then where we have the rescue service involved. So for the latest one, 2022, we can see that it's decreasing. And I think that has something to do, not only that we are more observant of what can happen, but also because we've been better at doing the registration. So we get more data. This is kind of interesting. What causes all the incidents? And of course, guides are the one driving first. So when we have 45% of the incidents happening in the terrain or when we make choice of routes, what does that tell us? Do the guides just drive occasionally around or choose the hardest part for the guests? Of course, the terrain will change depending on the conditions. The route might change because of the conditions. But 45% of the incidents happens when we choose the terrain we drive in, or we make a choice of route that we go. Conditions, 24%, visibility 8%. And this, someone talked about earlier, Franca, the parking. That's where we see where we have actually quite a lot of accidents. When we have groups and we, as guides, park them, we have to make sure we don't park too close. There's no need in parking too close. Usually we have a lot of space. Franca talked about doing the left-hand turn before parking. That's also when a lot of accidents happen. Why don't we do the left turn with guests?
You push on the gas and more restore speed.
Because guests will automatically push on the gas when they're turning left. So try at least to always do a right turn before parking. Speed is only 2%. We drive slow. Well, what do you think are behind the high percentage of terrain, choice of route?
Experience. As a guide, I've done this for 1,000 times, and you tend to forget how it feels to be on the snowmobile the first time.
Yeah.
So practice makes perfect. You might get better.
Yeah. Any other ideas? Yeah.
I guess that when you have a GPS, like, and especially like lately, you have like a change in the conditions with the wind and the snowfall. Then you're just following kind of like something that you're used to, and it actually is different. And then also, if you have a lot of new snow and you have someone that doesn't know how to drive a snowmobile, of course the snowmobile is going to keep its own point. So I guess that is also taken into consideration.
Yeah, I have filled this out too many times. But the terrain and choice of route, for at least in, unfortunately I've done the same mistake now many times. But if you drive in leaning terrain, for example, for a long time, people will get tired. And then eventually they're not gonna move their ass enough. And then you're gonna have one of these flip overs or incidents where they flip over in low speed, but they're too tired, and then the snowmobilist is just on the side and you don't understand really why. And then the terrain or choice of route is what I at least press in.
What do you mean by conditions? What is that? What was that?
Conditions is if there's a lot of icy conditions, if there are a lot of snow. And also terrain, choice of route. As a guide, you drive the same route hundreds of times. Maybe one day you decide you want to do some short turns, you want to do just another route that you haven't that much experience in, and then an incident could happen, of course. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. What we see here is that when we look at our real distribution of single and double snowmobiles, there's a huge part that are single snowmobiles, and quite a low part that we have as doubles, meaning you have a driver and a passenger on board. But we see still that most or a huge amount of incidents happens when you are two people on a snowmobile, which maybe shouldn't come as a surprise. But it's nice to just put in the back of your head that when you have two people on a snowmobile, the chances of having an incident is higher than if you're driving a single snowmobile. Yeah. So we can see that if we look at the snowmobile where we have a driver and a passenger, in a lot of the cases, the passenger was the one being injured and not the driver. We only had one case where the driver was injured and not the passenger. One should maybe think that the passenger would be more safe behind the driver. That's not the case. And why is that?
They don't see it coming.
They don't see it coming. Yeah. They don't follow the terrain. Any other ideas?
Sitting high on the snowmobile, it's a harder fall kind of.
Yeah. But mostly it's because, as you said, the passenger is not as attentive to the surroundings as the driver. I'm sorry, women, ladies. There is a larger amount of females that are injured on snowmobile trips than men.
It looks like we are the more careful drivers with the passengers.
Yeah. And what you could read out of this is, of the 39 injured women, 7 only was passengers. So maybe the women are actually better to drive with a passenger. But still, there is, as the numbers tells us, that women are more likely to have an incident than men. Injuries. Injuries.
What does the insurance statistics say about like the amount of like how expensive are the damages to the snowmobile considering women drivers and the male drivers?
That would be interesting to have a...
You don't have that?
I don't have that. It's too much, so I didn't tell. But again, why should women be more sustained to injuries than men?
Because they report.
The guides are doing the reporting.
Yeah, but they tell that they're injured, and the men, they are too embarrassed that they flipped already, so they won't say.
In general, women are much more right, and also the snowmobiles are designed for men, for example, this purple size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there is something about holding speed and going for it, which is not always the best, but it helps to keep some speed.
Mm-hmm.
Not like, and this is like all those incidents where you just go slower and slower and like drop out.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting how parts of damages are.
Hmm. Because normally we would think maybe that men are more aggressive driving and women are the ones taking a bit slower. Maybe then they should be safer. But no.
Women are more stressed in general when they start driving, when they've never been driving. I've observed that a lot when women in the morning are just more stressed about the whole driving thing.
Mm. And maybe a lot of women, maybe they didn't want to go in the first place. But they go because their husband is going or friend is going.
And I guess also women tip easier than men in terms of weight.
Injuries.
Injuries. Again, maybe it's not a surprise, but we can see that foreigners are a bigger percentage of injured people than Norwegians. I don't have any statistics on nationalities here. We just cracked everyone into one.
Is that because most of your guests are foreigners, or is that is it because most of the guests are foreigners? So obviously there is more incident with foreigners because there is a higher amount of guests.
We have 70% Norwegians.
Oh yeah, I didn't see. Sorry.
Yes. But again, of the small percentage of foreigners, they still do a lot of percentage for injuries. So I don't know, when you are out guiding on snow, the legs of the foot are the biggest ones. No, arm and shoulder, sorry, are the biggest one, with the legs of the foot being the second. Any surprises here? No?
It shows, as far as I can see, it's quite obvious that most incidents are related to tipping instead of actually crashing, because they just look at the upper body number, which will occur if you get the steering into your stomach, for instance. I think most of the problems are actually related to the
So yeah, that's correct. Like most of these incidents would occur during tipping. I mean, everyone will think that when you're about to tip, the most reflex you have is to put your leg out. And of course, that's what happens. Yeah. So these are just some of the slides that we have. We have a lot more going deeper into everything here. But if you are interested, we can share these slides with you. Or if you have any questions, you can come and ask me later. But yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to see like how many incidents we have, and what kind of incidents that are most likely to happen. Of course, being aware of the single and double snowmobiles, what kind of injuries that can happen, and just to have that in the back of your mind when you're out guiding. Yeah.
Did you find out that you had some special places where you often have incidents?
No. We have the data on it. I just didn't bring it here. But normally it will be on the more difficult trips, the longer trips, typically East Coast or Inverness or Barnstable when we had that trip.
So exhaustion is probably a factor. Exhaustion, like
yeah. When you are on a longer trip, definitely, you get tired, you lose concentration.
Maybe UK is the hotspot for accidents.
Maybe we are the only one that have incidents.
At least it's not due to speeding, as far as I can see.
No, we don't speed. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and again, I think this shows really that as a large company, it really makes a difference if they start collecting their incidents and are open about it, because we can learn from it. A better briefing, telling your guests to keep your arms in if they tip, to not hold the scooter, to not put out their legs. Simple stuff like this, maybe you can avoid a few of the incidents. I think we're gonna just continue straight away. And Christine approached me because she has a really nice story to tell. Is that maybe not started?
Well, it's a good example, or like one of those things that, you know.
All right. Hey, my name is Christine. I know some of you are new. It's really nice to see all of you. So this is me on one of my happy days. So normally I'm a quite happy person when I'm outside. And when I'm happy, I do stupid things. Yeah. I say yes to way too many people living at my place, or if someone asks me something, I would probably just go, yeah, that would be fun, super good. And I will tell you about one of these trips where everything could have gone wrong. All the things that I did sort of would add up to a massive accident. I was very lucky not to have any helicopters coming and picking me up that day. So I will tell you about this in sort of an attempt to open up the guide community to talking about incidents that we have on our company, or if you have any crevasses that you might have seen. And instead of feeling embarrassed about it, just talk about it so people can learn. A little bit like sharing that there's a super cool cathedral in Longyearbyen at the moment. Go there, look at it, it's super nice. But also be a bit aware of the rock in the middle of the track. So we can have sort of that communication between us guides. We do not have anyone except for each other when we're out in the field, so we want to take care of each other as well. So this trip was one of these super nice trips. I was new, it was my first year, young and stupid. Came up here, didn't understand Norwegian, I'm Swedish. So my first weeks up here was very confusing. We had something called brekurs. Like bre in Swedish is what you do with butter on your sandwich. So I was there in my knowledge. I went to SGA course, super fun. Didn't understand so much there either. It was a bit overwhelming with the sleeping in this kantgro. What is that? Like you just dig yourself in. Great. I can sleep here. Some guy took my polar bear watch. I didn't have to do that. Super happy. Yeah, I could. Thank you. And then I came out from there and I started guiding. Started guiding for the same company I work for today. Not the same boss. I will say that. It's not your fault. And I got the overnight trip 1 week. So I had a night in Svea, and I came to Radisson Hotel, picked 4 guys up. They were 25 years old, super nice. We went there, had the best trip ever. We were one of those trips where like sitting on the mountaintop and crying together. It was so beautiful. So the next week I got another overnight trip, and I was supposed to pick up 3 people, 2 guys and 1 girl. And from there everything just started to go sort of downhill. So these 2 guys, they were very rich. They didn't speak any Scandinavian language, so everything was in English. And they didn't really want to have me as a girl, a young girl at the time, I was 21 I think, as their guide out in the wilderness. And they made that quite clear, so I needed to like stand my ground and be a little bit defensive. And I don't, in general, I don't like that so much. So we started out with the briefing, and they were sort of just, you know, keeping their eyes on their phones. They didn't want to listen. We got the clothes on, and we started driving out in Advent Valley. Before I passed the old airport, we did 80 kilometers an hour. They were really fast, and they really pushed me to go faster. We got to the cabin that we were supposed to stay at, and the girl was not allowed to drive anymore because she was going too slow. This was a boys' trip. So she was put on one of the other snowmobiles. And also when we get to this beautiful cabin, you know, all of us will love a cabin trip. We arrived to the cabin, and the first thing that they ask is where the reception is. They wanted to check into this beautiful hotel. So their expectations were up there. I was over here, and we ended up somewhere in the middle. It was a fantastic day. We started driving to Tempefjord. I know Tempefjord, no problem. We went out there, went out on the ice. And this communication between us sort of just went worse and worse and worse. Me trying to show them how to chop a hole to see how thick the ice was, like an attempt for me to try to teach them, just ended up in they thinking I didn't have muscles enough to dig a hole in the ice. So we just went to 2 different places today. And I'm sure some of you have been in this situation before, where the expectations of the guests are completely other ones of what you have. And I think that trip, in the end, I will try to sum up that sometimes what you want to deliver is not what the guests want to have, and you can't push that limit too far.
So we got out of the ice and we saw these beautiful tracks of the polar bear. And for me, that was I didn't have, like, I've seen maybe 2 polar bears in my life at this time, so I was super excited. I brought a big camera out. And we stopped by the glacier, and if I learned one thing from the SGA course, looking at this video of the uni students, is that you should park away from the ice. So I did that, and I was so proud. And we stopped there, had lunch, and then we had a visitor coming over. Yeah, so this is taken with like my big lens over far distance. We're sitting on the ice, you see the sun is shining, it's Frost and her 2 babies. It's the most amazing experience ever for me. They took a photo with their phone, and then they plugged in their headphones and watched Netflix while I was standing there. And my frustration was too big. I wanted to impress these people. They were here on Svalbard, like our Svalbard, our dreamland. So I went a little bit too far trying to impress them. We were standing at the Temple Fjord, and I was trying to talk to them about Hilmar Nøy's, this great trapper. They weren't impressed. Okay, great. I was trying to talk about the geology. No, didn't work. They wanted to go closer, either to the glacier or to the polar bear. That's it. Okay, great. And I started talking about pyramiden. And that sort of triggered them a little bit. They wanted to go there. And then she needed to pee. Refused, like she was not allowed to pee outside, so we needed to go back to the cabin to pee. So at 2 o'clock we turned around, went back to the cabin, and we stayed there. But on the way, I did one of the most stupidest things I could ever have done. So at Templefjord, like at Fredheim, I'm stopping there and I see this guy. He looks like he has control of the situation, right? A little bit older, Norwegian, so I could sort of understand what he was saying. And he was going to Pyramiden, so I asked him if I could get the track from him. So we're standing there with 2 garments, exchanging this track. And he just, in the pass by, he just says, yeah, by the way, it's from 2007. Well, okay, good. Super, 2018, it was probably good. I know nothing about glaciers, they are stable, right? So the next day, it is weather like it is right now, actually. It was snowing a little bit, not so much wind, but there was flat light, definitely. And we are, instead of going to the east coast, we are doing the trip over to Pyramiden. Yeah. So I'm trying to do something that I shouldn't do. Like in my job description, it says drive to Templefjord. And then you drive to East Coast. 2 trips, I do know, I do have my own track. I've been there the same week, everything should be fine. But instead, I'm going out of my comfort zone to try to impress these guests. So we drive over Templefjord and into unknown terrain. Like I've never been here, ever before. Up through the Murdoch Glacier, and there you have at least 2 big meltwater channels going up. Going down to Gipsdalen, you have 1 big thing you should watch out for, like a big, massive meltwater channel on the side. And then into this little crooked valley that just gets smaller and smaller. Avalanche danger, I don't know. I didn't see the mountains, there was bad visibility. And then trying to go up towards Nordenskjöld Glacier. And at that point, when you're just sitting there and you're driving, you're looking at the track that you have from a guy that I don't even know his name, in deep snow, and you're just thinking, okay, I heard something. There was this girl, Charlie, she said something about glaciers and cracks. I shouldn't jump off my snowmobile if something happens. Yeah, okay, that was probably it. Driving up, driving down Nordenskjöld Glacier, and I can see the track from the other snowmobiles. That's sort of what I've been following. But at this time, my track is going to the right, and the track of all other snowmobiles are going straight forward. Do you want to guess what I did? I took a right turn, and I drove straight out towards what I didn't know was the actual front of the glacier. Because it has moved back, like a glacier is doing right now. So I ended up flying for 2 meters before I hit the sea ice. The sea ice, I didn't know if it was thick enough for me, my snowmobile, and as you said, the sled coming after me. So I speeded up a little bit, and then I could see these 2 other snowmobiles flying out from the glaciers and landing on the ice. And that, I would say, impressed my guests a lot. They were super happy about it. We get to Pyramiden, and there again, I'm super stoked. I've never been in Pyramiden. It's an amazing place. I was so happy, and the step looks like this mountain thing, walking around, and we're supposed to sit outside and eat dry take. Nah. They went inside and they bought everything on the menu. And they also invited me, so I was again quite happy. I was sitting there and eating these fantastic pancakes. So good. And this is around 1:30 in the afternoon. And then all of a sudden one of them says, yeah, you know what, Christine? We're going to the North Pole tomorrow. And we have a meeting at 4 o'clock. And I'm looking at him like, that is not possible. He's like, yeah, it's gonna be possible. And then again, my stupid self, I just took the challenge, because I'm a competitive person. And we drove after the lunch, and we drove fast. All the way back to town, and they were 15 minutes late, with a pickup stop at the cabin over here. And afterwards, I was super impressed with myself. I managed to go to Pyramiden, never been there before, no problem. And now, when I'm standing here 6 years later, looking back at that day, and with all the knowledge and education I have today, and all the nice people around me with all the knowledge, I am just super thankful that I survived that day. That I didn't fall into a crevasse, that I didn't fall into the ocean when dropping off this glacier, that I know a little bit more about avalanches today. And I'm really, really happy to be able to share this story with you guys. As a little reminder that it is not our job to make our guests cry of beauty of Svalbard. It is our job to bring them out there to see nature and to bring them home safely. It doesn't cost everything that you have. If you can't manage to impress them to the most maximum, it's actually enough to just bring them out and to bring them safely back home. And if you see something out there, please share it with everyone. And that's why I want to share this story, to open up to you guys, so you can open up to each other about all the stupid things that we do out there, because I promise you, you're not the first one doing it. And you are not the last one. The last idiot is not born yet, so you'll be safe. So that is actually that I wanted to say. So open up. Thank you so much. Yeah, does anyone sort of recognize themselves in getting a track from someone and just driving without actually knowing where you are? Yeah? No one has ever done that before, right? And I think it's really nice. I've been asked a few times to sort of share tracks. Oh, you've been there. Can you share the track with me? I would love to do it, but also not. I want you guys to sort of see where you're going. You could absolutely have a coffee with me. I love coffee. And we can talk about the route, all the problem points. For example, the lecture that you did, Sylvia, super great. To sort of pinpoint, okay, here there is stuff happening. But you never know if there's things in between. The glaciers are moving, I know that now. So there might occur cracks in the other place, or new snow with new cornices, or whatever it is. So we can have a coffee, we can talk about the route, I can tell you where I went, and when you go there yourself, just have good visibility. Make your own evaluations, and do not die on the track. Yeah. Good.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think that was super nice. Also, a little bit taken from there is maybe sometimes the companies may ask you to do something that you're actually not comfortable with, especially when it's your first year or the place you've never been before. It's absolutely okay to say that you don't want to do it. You do not need to impress your company. that's just not worth it for anyone. So that's also something that we want to advertise a little bit. It's okay to say no, and you don't, and that's just fair enough. So if you're not sure, we say, then you are sure, which means if you're not sure if you should do it, then your answer should be no. Good. Then I think we take a little break again. We have also, I think for you, maybe this could be a good moment maybe to share what you wanted to share. We have Christian here from Svalbard Guide Association, and then also I think Basha wanted to present a little bit, and I will talk about the very interesting and exhausting talk about the upcoming guide certification. So the proposal that was, is now a few years already that we're like people working on it. There are certain proposals, and it looks like that we are heading towards a solution, or like at least something will happen. So I would love to keep you updated.
Yeah, since we will change the topic, I just want to say I'm not a snowmobile guide, but I'm very cautious on the trade with snowmobile, and I'm trying to get all the information I can. And I realize there are people out there who are giving a lot of information, but we think that, oh, we heard it once, so it's okay, we don't need more. And for example, this year there was, this flight in October, like in the end of the season, when we make this flight, this helicopter flight. And they make some picture and tell us about it. And they talked about it during the Svalbard seminar, when they had a evening about the safety on the glacier. Then there was Arctic Safety Center at UNIS who made something for their own employee and for the students, but who opened it to us and we could follow it online. And yes, at one point they were speaking about the same and showing the same picture, but it was not the same person speaking. And when I told some people, oh, do you go there? No, it's okay, I saw the other one. Yeah, that they actually gave much more information and different information. So I think sometimes even if we think that it will be a double thing, we should still go because we can always learn, even if it's only one thing. It can be one thing that is very important for you.
So usually in other years, semesters team is usually much earlier. So when I came back in January, I went to semester and asked when will be time for semester team, because we usually do the conference after, and they sort of had forgotten about it. So that's why it happens now mid-March, in the middle of the season for you guys, but I still really encourage you guys to come 14th of March, I think 6th to 8th. And yes, they will present pictures they took from the glaciers. They will talk a bit about changes in the glaciers there. So yeah, it's really good. Make it on, put it on your calendar. Good. 5 minutes break, and then.
Thanks, Mara. All right, I'm going to be quick. I try at least a couple of minutes about a topic that has been following me around the last couple of days, and I guess also many of you. It concerns locals as much as us guides, I think, and in total it also concerns our future in a way. Tourism as a future workplace, or Svalbard as a destination for tourism worthwhile coming up. And part of it is these temporary changes to the areas where we're allowed to go to with the snowmobiles. So just quick, Frank already introduced me. My name is Chris. I'm Svalbard Guide Association, my company, and here since about 10 years now. And the first time we were confronted with this was in 2018. And when I heard that it's now coming back and improved or not improved, however you want to see it, these regulations again and again and again, we realized that we have done many of these inputs to the governor over the years, over the last 5 years, and it seems like they all end up in a drawer or in an email folder. They are acknowledged, but then ignored in a way. So after writing another inspiel about the topic, I asked for some advice and support in the association, the guide group, and got a lot of very nice feedback. Lots of positive comments, and a lot of people asked if they can sign this. So we made it into a petition, and now this is almost up to 50 signatures, and I'm hoping to tell you a little bit about the suggestions that we have talked about here tonight, and then hopefully get some more to sign this, and next week, if things go well, we can send it to Svalbard Posten and hopefully also create a little bit of a public opinion about it, which hopefully puts a little bit of pressure on the officials to talk about this, not just in the way that year after year there are more and more regulations without alternatives. And that's what I'm going to focus on is alternatives. So in a way I completely understand and agree that with the growth of tourism we need to protect certain areas. And for sure breeding ground for seals and hunting ground for polar bears, especially in the front of these amazing glacier fronts, is a difficult area to talk about. We would like to go there to show glacier fronts, of course, but also to witness a potential chance for polar bear encounters. But then also, like the governor said, and the study of the Norwegian Polar Institute suggested, it's a very big impact on these breeding grounds, our appearance there, the snowmobile traffic. So one thing, when you do close down areas only without offering alternatives, in my experiences at least, is that all the traffic is focused on a small amount of place area, which again has negative influences or impact on that area. So my hope in this is to acknowledge the need for some regulations and accept the fact that we will have to adapt this, especially in those vulnerable areas, but maybe there are still alternatives and places that we can open instead that are actually safe to go to and help distribute the load of tourism a bit. So one of the places that we were thinking about was to open along Kap Schulz to Von Post Glacier, a corridor a little bit like it is now in Petunia Bukta, to open an alternative route to the East Coast or to the way up north, so not everybody has to go through Rubber Plain. Or you can choose to do a circle, which is of course an addition to the quality of your trip as well. That would be something that I believe would keep most of Templefjorden safe and scooter free for seals and polar bears to live and enjoy life, and also still give us some option to not be stuck in one place. Another example, what we were thinking about, is widening the blue zone of Area 10 north of Ragnarbrain to a place called Hoppelandvatnet. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it. It's only allowed to go there as locals, but it is one of the most amazing places. It's a glacier front on a freshwater lake, which means there are no seals. It's not a specific hunting ground for polar bears in that regard. And if you would just widen the blue zone of Area 10 a tiny bit, not much, you could include that for us as an experience. And just to give you an impression, this is how it looks. And it looks like a normal, beautiful glacier front that ends in the ocean, with only the difference that it's actually a freshwater lake, which means there are no seals, which is the whole purpose of closing down the fjords. But so far no one has reacted to that suggestion, so I'm going to try to make it a bit public. Same thing here. If there's just a tiny bit of add to the blue zone, you have a totally alternative route down to the east coast via Heisbrain, and you don't have to go all the way on the one track where everybody is going in a way. Another place, and I have to admit I've not been there myself, it would also be illegal to go there, is Radjörna. It's in the southern part, Kjellströmdalen, and I'm not sure if this is worthwhile going to, but I would like to keep us being able to discover Svalbard once in a while again, to explore more and to show places to the guests that are amazing. And Radjörna, the lake there, and the glacier that ends in the lake could potentially, if you look at it from the satellite picture, again, this is Topo Svalbard, so it's 11 years old and probably not very accurate, but I would like to go and check out places like this that are good to show glaciers, good to talk about ice, good to talk about, good to show the most beautiful parts of Svalbard without disturbing the seals and the polar bears. So my hope is really to gain some public drive with this. There are more suggestions. I invite you to read the text. I have put up some QR codes. You can scan it with your phone on the way out, on the door as well. Share it with your friends, with your colleagues. I would love to get some more companies behind it as well. So far there's Backyard Svalbard, thank you very much. There's Polar X, and there's Spitzbergen-Reisen. So if you sign up as a private person, fair enough. If you do as a company, very much welcome. Then please use first name or your full name and last name for your company. And then I hope to get at least 100 votes behind this. And then we can go to Svalbard Boston and maybe have a little bit of an impact in a way that is not just, again, ignored and put away in a drawer, but rather talked about and maybe changed. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. All right, yeah, so you see we kind of starting to get into the topic that is also political in a way, so you most likely all seen that there are different proposals, regulation changes. There's two big ones out to they are now being worked on by the government. We don't really have any updates on it, it's all like kind of this darkness that we are trying to put some light, and it's very hard to get information about it as well. But you maybe remember that there were a Fackeltalk as well, I think that was in November 2021, and the result of that was that at least for one regulation proposal, the government decided to look into it again, so kind of to withdraw the proposal and start talking about the guide certification. And the Svalbard Guide Association, we have decided that this is our biggest focus point. We cannot focus on all the different proposals because they are big, they are very difficult. It's 90 pages of Norwegian, you're more than welcome to go through them, it's a lot of fun. But we're focusing on the guide certification because that's what we think is most important for you guys. And with certification, a lot of other things fall into place. But why is it really so important? And I think in a way it helps us to be recognized as a profession because with certification, of course, we are more easier to value in a way. And at the moment, there are some courses out there. We have the SGO from Visit Svalbard. There's, of course, ANG, the Arctic Nature Guiding. And then there's also lots of other courses out there. There's a school in Sweden. They have one in Greenland, Iceland. There are different places in Finland as well where you can do guide courses. But it's all kind of like, all over the place. Nobody really knows about it. So we pushed a little bit to be part of that working group that starts, or like the working group that sits together at the semester and talks about the certification, and we are focusing on certain things. So for us as the Svalbard Guide Association, we want the content of the certification to be valid for guiding, and that means also covering all sorts of topics. We want that also, of course, recognize that already existing certification and experience will be recognized in some way. We also want that it's affordable because especially now after COVID, I think a lot of guides don't have 10,000 euros to invest in the certification. But also for the government, of course, for the companies, it should be affordable in some way. And we need to all keep that in mind, but also most importantly, it needs to be affordable for nature. Having us travel on planes to do courses, for example, is not the smartest. So how can we find good solutions for that? And then also, of course, whoever at the end creates that certification, who will be the body that does it, it needs to be independent. So to make the wisest choices for the guides, and not in the interest of the company, for example. So what did we do now the last years, basically? I'm just going to give it. Doesn't really want to go to the next slide. I don't know why it does that. Ah, here we go. Okay, so yeah, since 2018, we're working on this, and we started to have our first meetings in November 2019, when we were sitting up at Sysselmannen back then, and we were raising that topic. what about guide certification on Svalbard. In February and April 2020, Sus and Man back then already started a working group. We were part of that as well with the whole Navic sleeve of Svalbard, and that took actually a couple of months, and then they also handed that in to the government. And out of that, then was a proposal created, and in May 2021, there was then a feedback session that was online because it was during COVID, where the ministries in Oslo asked for feedback to that proposal. And we kind of always hand in feedback, we go to the meetings, we work through those proposals. As I mentioned, they're quite long sometimes, and we try to open up for alternatives. In August 2021, August and September I think it was, the ministry published the two big proposals. They were both 90 pages big, and as a result of that, in October, November, we had the faculty talk and the demonstrations in town. Maybe some of you remember that, regarding those regulations and other regulations that upset people in Longyearbyen. And then finally, in February, March 2020, the governor received a mandate, so like a kind of a job, please put together a working group and start working on a new proposal for the Svalbard Guide certification. And basically since September, we've been working on that. So every couple of weeks, there's a meeting, we talk about something, we give our feedback, written and also during the meeting, and then that all was finally sent in January 2023 to the government in Oslo. And I sadly do not know what the outcome of that is. I guess that will be still processed. We are kind of still inquiring to get some feedback from it. It can go either way. It can become a very complex certification. It can become a very easy certification, but we don't know that yet. But it will definitely come. So that's 100% sure. We don't know when. It was first proposed to start in January 2023. That obviously is not happening, but it will definitely come. And I encourage every one of you to think about that, to keep that in your mind that at one point you won't be able to work on Svalbard if you're not certified. And that means licensed. So at one point you will need to apply with the courses you have done to the semester, and you will get a license to work as a guide on Svalbard. And that's something I think that is very good for our profession in general, but it will of course involve a lot of extra paperwork, time, courses, money, and so on. And the Arctic Safety Center from UNIS is very much involved, and it looks like that they just got the funding for a position that will continue to work on the guide certification. So maybe eventually you can do courses with the Arctic Safety Center, but I don't know yet how they will look like. We are working very hard on it, that the system will be as flexible as possible. Because of course in winter we have snowmobile guides, but we have dog mushers. In the summer we have kayak guides, we have cruise guides, we have hiking guides. A snowmobile driver does not need to know how to work with dogs, usually. It's very uncommon that they have to do that, and the other way around. So we need to be having a flexible system. How can we do this? A kayak guide doesn't need a crevasse course. I don't know, if they manage to end up in a crevasse, they did something really wrong. Same with avalanches, they don't need an avalanche course. So we need to be flexible with those things. So we're trying to give that kind of feedback. Any questions so far?
Yeah. I'm wondering for like how is it gonna work with like people that are coming here only for one season because I don't know, the husband is working at UNIS and they want to work as a guide, and then they choose to come here for a season. How is that going to be possible to get like, all the certification?
It won't.
It won't. So they won't be able to work as a guide.
Most likely not. It's going to be, like, to be very honest about it, it's going to be very difficult because most of the courses you want to be able to do in October, November. So it's drive with the snow scooter, the sea ice.
So it's kind of pushing
maybe
also having
like
it's kind of pushing having guides that are here for 2 years, not like guides that are here for only like 1 season, 2 seasons.
I think it's one of those topics that we try to raise is how do you provide the industry, so the companies, with the guides they need. Because there is such a big turnover. The question is, why is there such a big turnover? How can we make it more attractive for the guides to stay? Is it really that there's not enough work for guides to stay here all year round? Or is that just something that we make them believe? So it's like kind of, we try to open up for the whole idea of having the possibilities for guides to stay here all year round. I can ask you the question, how many of you are permanently employed? As a guide, sorry. As a guide, permanently employed as a guide. You have a 100% position, and you can't, like, if you don't quit, you will keep that position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 70 people, it's 10%. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for an industry to have 10% permanently employed guides. Because if you look at the big picture, when guides are working throughout the year, I can guarantee you that the companies could employ more than 10%. And it's easier. It's so much easier to employ seasonal workers. The more flexible tourism changes, you can adapt. And that's a big challenge that we need to face. With the companies together, it's like nothing, you need to blame the companies for it, but it's like a system. Housing. This year it's an absolute nightmare. I don't know how many of you struggle with housing at this very moment. You can raise your hands how many of you struggle with housing at the moment. Oh, that's actually surprising. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, but then it's, you talk about like how to make the guide staying longer and stay like more sustainable and stay all year long. That's the main problem. I mean, I stay new and just here, a year and a half, yeah. And then eventually a couple of weeks and you get a tent. And what's up? Anyway, all the big companies that don't hire guides keep empty apartments. But then who's going to raise their voice or help at some point guide? Because if there is no guides, there is no tourists. Like if there is no all these people, or us on the street, of course. But it's one of the main reasons why people come here is for tourism. So going on expedition or snowmobile, on bike, on ski or whatever. And as you say, accommodation is ridiculous. Unless your company already sorted out an apartment and have a contract for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
So it's like a general problem that when you think about the community, how can you make the community work? Then of course it becomes more and more challenging if the people that work here, seasonal or permanently, if they can't afford to stay all year round. It's just not possible. And yeah, in a way, the guides are the backbone of tourism. If you don't have guides, then there is no tourism. It's just not.
Yeah, then the question is if you know anything about if there is a discussion there about housing.
Yeah.
Since it is a lot about that for the guides. If the guides should become more professional, then the housing should definitely become more professional, is my opinion.
Exactly.
But is there a discussion about that in Oslo?
I don't know that they discuss in Oslo, but let's put it like this. If it is harder to get the guide you need to do the job because you only can employ a certified guide, then that guide can go, yeah, sure, I come, but only if you give me housing and only if I get maybe similar deals than others have done. And I don't have to pay 12,000 of my salary into rent. I think that will raise the quality. Like, that's the only way how you can create demand in a way.
It's not a guide-specific topic. It's all the private companies, as long as you don't stay, so you or don't have enough for yourself.
It's not just, of course, it's not like for I see that, of course. Yeah, there's others, and it's a problem in all over town. But of course, for the guides, that's where we can get the positive side effect of a certification, a mandatory certification will be that we will be able to demand certain things. And I think that's healthy as a profession.
But yes, even for companies, it's really hard to find housing.
Yes, so if the company does go with something, it's the same issue again.
Of course, that's what I meant. It's not like that. Like other professions that have like a carpenter company, they don't get housing and they want them to build stuff, but they don't want the housing. So
I think maybe Ronnie can say something to the housing. You approached me a little bit about the housing situation.
I didn't hear the question.
The question was that it's not just us guides, it's carpenters, it's companies that want to rent apartments for the employees, and even they don't get housing. So it's not just the guides.
Did you ask me to say it?
Yes.
My name is Ron, I work for Business Svalbard. So yeah, housing is the major issue at the moment. Probably a few hundred people lacking beds when we enter winter season now, and even worse in the summer. So this is not only guides, it's people working at restaurants, at the shops, at the construction companies, and so on and so on. And the only thing I know is that tourism is not increasing. So it's not the guides that are the problem, or the other people working in tourism. The growth must come from other parts in the Norwegian society. So we try to address this, towards the local community, towards the Norwegian, towards the Norwegian authorities, but it's really hard to get through. It's like the guide qualification scheme is really hard to get through there as well. But my suggestion to all you guys is use your voices. I know someone in here tonight already will do that by pressing Svalbardposten, just showing your faces and who you are, and speak your voice, because this is maybe the biggest issue for many of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, in addition to that, we're going to launch another questionnaire tomorrow. So please fill it out. That data that we get from it, we can use to then address the right questions, and then maybe get Svalbardposten the right statistics they need to create the case. Yeah.
Yeah, it was also rumors about that certification that if you don't speak a certain language, then you can't guide. And I just want to know if that rumor is true.
I don't know, you're talking about Finnish or? Yeah, I think that was one of the very first proposals, that you needed to speak Norwegian to be able to guide. I don't think that is any more discussed. I think they dropped that very quickly based on the data. Yeah. So we have collected we launched a couple of questionnaires in the past, and about 5% of all guides are, like, if we look at all the guides that answered, so summer, winter guides, cruise guides, and so on, 5% speak Norwegian. And I think that made them drop it rather fast. But that's also one of the points, there's very little data. So when the Norwegian government suggested certain things, they were surprised, and we said we are estimating that there's about 1,000 guides that work on Svalbard throughout the year. At the moment, there's 17 of you guys here. So there's a huge, nobody has numbers. We don't know what we're really using. What did you say? No?
This certification, like, is where you written down kind of the last feedback, or it was like the last stage before you left it now?
The last feedback, and I thought that was a very good feedback I got from Systemesteren themselves. They contacted me in December and asking for a detailed description of the proposal we made. So we proposed a certain certification scheme that we think would be very flexible with modules. So guides can certify in their profession, like in their specialization basically. And they wanted me to describe that in detail, so that they got that and they delivered it in January. But I don't know. I mean, it's good that they asked. Let's put it like this.
Is that on the webpage or Facebook page? What you?
No, I haven't. If you guys want to read boring, yeah, I can publish it.
Yes, that's like what you told them, and kind of just
yes,
to get
yeah, we can put that together.
How it may be.
Yeah. So I will get. Yeah, let's see at what's next. So of course we continue to send in feedbacks to hearings, and so there we will collect data via questionnaires, and we will of course never give up. That's really important. And then just because I like it so much, We have this beautiful, comic that we have from Bruno. I really like it. Sometimes it's just hard because you keep on saying the same thing, but for some reason they don't hear it. Good. And of course, what we need is your voices. We need you to be active. We talked to Sergey. We need people to show more. Yesterday there was a demonstration, a bit unrelated to guide certification, but the Prime Minister is in town at the moment, and we just wanted to show him that we are here. Most of us are international, and we lost our voting rights. I think most of you know that. I think that's a very fundamental thing to lose in a democracy. And that kind of shows also where things are heading. So it's really important, if you can, speak up, go to those demonstrations, make time, invest a bit of free time if you find any. I know it's high season soon, and take part in things like this. I think that's super important. So was that kind of Good. She's working on a really interesting project where she's combining, and maybe you can just introduce yourself. I think that's the easiest, right? Because she is working with certification. And there are many, many projects that do so. And also for those guys, the researchers, it's really hard to be heard. And they also need your voices. So let's see.
I actually have a question because, you were talking before that there is also a school in Sweden and in Iceland, and are they also working on certification? Is there anything else that is proposed anywhere else? Or is there anything that is going to be kind of like international, or is going to be?
There are international certifications that are related to polar tourism. Yes. I'm going to introduce one of them after Basher. But there is nothing that you have to have a certification. So there's no mandatory certification. As far as I know, not. In Iceland, a little bit, sort of. Indirect, like the companies are just demanding it, and then Greenland, I don't think so. Galapagos, for example, that's just lower. In those areas, Galapagos is a beautiful example on how to increase the status of a guide and protect nature, but still have tourism. So sometimes you have to look a bit further, but we see good examples how it could be done. All right, thank you. I will try to keep it short. I know it's a little bit late. Some of you know me because I used to live on Svalbard, and I kind of still live here. Like, one of you come and go every now and then, and you always find yourself on Svalbard. There are people in this room like Franka, but they know me from either guiding or I was shadowing some of the works. There are companies I work for. There are people that were part of my research, and this is the reason why I want to speak up tonight, and thank you for giving me the voice. Because it seems like we are very small. I'm also speaking on behalf of being a guide. We are a community that doesn't have much power, but there is a light in the tunnel, and it's a research. And I know that research on Svalbard, it's 96% of the research is natural sciences, and imagine me, I sit in the office at Tunis and I'm a social scientist, and when I hear that I'm a psychologist or somebody like this, or the tourism is not the science and this and that, then of course it's really difficult to relate, but I hope that you will be able to relate to me tonight. So I am educated in a teacher. I teach in a guiding school in Greenland. I did the ING course in 2017-18, so some of you know me. I work as a guide in Svalbard, Iceland and Greenland. And then I took, in this year when there was a lot of accidents, seems like, according to Kulturutens statistics, then I picked up my research on safety and guides competence. So it seems quite relevant. The Svalbard Guide Association started around the same time. And when the changes were proposed, so all of that kind of fits. I kind of stepped out of guiding. I couldn't research I couldn't work as a guide while researching community. But my idea was to speak up on behalf of the guides. So not to look into the safety management from the company or the governments. So I'm kind of apolitical, and I represent like Svalbard, Iceland and Greenland. So I'm not involved into decision making at the government level, but I really thought that as guides we have a lot to say because we are the experts going out every day.
So I started this PhD. At the end of it, so at the beginning, I interviewed a lot of guides. Some guides on Svalbard were part of this research, companies and people that they are guides and CEOs of the companies and so on. And by making those articles that a lot of people maybe find boring to read, some science that it's really difficult to get through stuff like this. But this is actually our mandate with the government, because if there's no data, for them it's really difficult to read, Svalbard Posten, which of course it's amazing for us to read, it's very clearly written, but people don't take it seriously. And in the science, we don't consider this as a resource to look at. So you can have so many voices by saying so many articles, but if we don't have a research on it, the government cannot use some, like hard facts and say, like, we have to do something about it. So if you engage with the research in one way or another, we have more say. So at the beginning, I started with the interviews, and I'm not going to talk about my scientific outcome. You can read about that in those articles. But I was showing the perspective of the guides and what the guides want, what they think is dangerous, and how they are in the field, what they think is important for the guiding communities. Then I moved into following different guiding programs. I went to ING course again and followed the students in a classroom for a year. And I taught in a guiding school in Greenland, and I was making notes, and this will be also published later on. And this way I gained visibility in the community. So I was going to guiding schools in Iceland, Svalbard, and Greenland, and I was saying this is what we do. Then I went to different stakeholders like companies and government, and I said, you have to pay attention more to what is happening in the ground, because they are people with the expertise. We need to recognize it. So even though I couldn't say that for a long time, for the last 2 years, because I was really working on the ground with people that are just not recognized, basically all of us, often at the company's level or at the government level. But now I reached the last part of my PhD, where I applied for different fundings and gathered a lot of people to meet with the stakeholders. So the project that I just finished, I just came back, we have 3 guiding schools. They are public guiding schools. I work with that in my research because I'm alone, so I cannot work with all different training programs. So we have Arctic guiding program in Greenland. It's a 5 months education. It's going to be soon 1 year education. Mountaineering program at FAS in school in Iceland, and an Arctic nature guide program in Svalbard. But again, there's a lot of different trainings, a lot of companies, and a lot of people, they build up their own initiatives and start. So this is just what is out there, but we have much more to use to speak up. Through this, we got money from I became like a grant writer, and I wanted really to connect different people, because me as a guide, I didn't have much saying in my own company when I worked on Svalbard, and I was questioning some of the safety measures. I didn't have much saying as a teacher in one of the guiding schools, because it's just guiding school somewhere in Greenland, So we became like a part of networking organization when we collected the 3 guiding schools in Svalbard, Iceland, and Greenland, and 2 universities. I'm from University of Iceland, and University of Stavanger, which one of the professors works at the Arctic Safety Center, and we started to collaborate. The idea was that we just meet and get to know each other, have a cup of coffee, and say what we do. But actually this developed much to the much bigger project, which we just ran last week. And then we went for the workshop where we invited companies and the government, and we had the embassy, the Norwegian embassy in Iceland, that they also participated in it. They came to the workshop where we asked different questions. Everything is related to guides. Of course, my research is safety, but related, but it's all about guides are out there. How do we acknowledge what they already do? How do we proceed? And it's not necessarily with the certification only, but we want to be part of the union. We want to we have mothers, fathers, people that want to live from guiding. They are not. I'm not in my 20s any longer. I don't want to I need to make living out of guiding, right? So it's a lot of voices in the industry. It's not 18, 20 years old people that it's just a fun job to do for a season, but people actually want to live from it. They want to be paid for it. They want to be recognized for it. If we get education, you want the company to acknowledge that too, and so on. So the idea was to talk all about that. We managed to gather various stakeholders, And now we are going to move to Svalbard and Greenland with those workshops. So in a way, through going into the research, I managed to build recognition for some that it's going to be scientific, but through people like you that gave me access to the field, then we are becoming more strong. So why is it important that you as a guide, as a company, we are representing various different interests in this room in a way. What can we do and how can we do it? So the engagement is important because, as I said, we are coming from different countries, we are working in different countries. We are we want to be part of the union. By being part of the Svalbard Guide Association and things like this, we can raise the voices. And it's very difficult to fight for your own rights if you are just guide in a company, but by collecting people working together, we can speak on behalf of the community. On the other hand, I can tell you that there's so many funding opportunities for collaboration. And it's just, I know that when you start stuff like that, it's very difficult to get through the CEO, paperwork and so on. But there's so many options. You don't have to be from the university. There's a lot of fundings to collaborate between guiding companies, innovation, initiatives for tourism, for education. Education is a really big thing for funding. So, looking into that as a company, as anyone in this room, you have a lot of different backgrounds, bringing more science and stuff like this, connecting people. There's so much funding out there that we can aim for. Develop the careers and your position. Actually, when I started my PhD, it was 2020. I took safety courses at the Arctic Safety Center. I was, I think, the first, maybe the second year that I did the courses, the second, I think. And in the same classroom, I had 6 ING students with me. So people that finish guiding, they didn't want to guide. They continue in master level on the safety, and now they are out somewhere. Why the companies don't hire them to be like the safety managers? They are people that have the background in being out in the field and theoretical knowledge of how to run things, So by getting more education or being more recognized, I actually specialists. Often it's the government don't, and then we have the same issue in Iceland and the same in Greenland. The government, they are not the guides. They know nothing about guiding. For them to look at the map and decide where you cannot drive or what you cannot do, it's so easy, It's like, put your coffee cup and make a circle and, okay, this is where we're not going to drive this season. I mean, of course, I hope I'm not offending anyone, but this is how it is. Those people don't have the expertise. You are the experts. So by, going more into of your own comfort zone and joining collaborative, stuff, then we can do much more. Because if you are recognized as an expert in your company, then they are going to create, positions where we are going to have safety officers. And I think it's horrible that in Longyearbyen, it seems like only one or few companies actually have someone that collects the data on accidents. What do they do with this data even if it's collected, We are the resources for the company. So if we speak up on our rights, it's going to be much more, they're going to press more on the companies to actually do something with it. And then creating projects, as I said, all of that is related to seeking funding, more education, and collaborative stuff. So it's all out there. How you can engage? Well, the first step maybe that you can do tonight is to take the survey that we are doing. This survey, as Franka said, it's one of the stuff that it's going to be sent later on to the government. There are 6 or 5 questions you can visit, and we are going to present that later on, and you will have access to it. The second is they come up with idea. I'm not selling here myself. I'm not searching for a job, so it's not that I'm saying that I can do this and that. But if you have idea that you have been, seeing as a very neglected thing out there while you are guiding, find me in a town. I'm still here until June, and we can have a coffee, whatever. If there's more that you want to know, how to find the money, how you want to collaborate, and how to search for different education, how to reach out to guiding schools and get more education in other places and so on. You can find me. I'm very open for all of that because I was a guide before, and I'm really, interested in making this networking. So if you are into that, you can reach out to me. And then the workshop. We are gonna have the workshop. This group of different guiding schools and universities. in May, and we are going to invite Arctic Safety Center, Switzerland, it's invited, we invited Visit Svalbard, and more stakeholders, and that's going to be another forum where we are going to ask the same questions we asked in Greenland and Iceland, and we will ask in Greenland, and later on we will present it in a paper. Actually, every year in Iceland there's a big conference with politicians, and even I'm not personally interested in that kind of work, but you know, those are the platforms where you can come and say like, this is what we do, and you know, something needs to be done. And I was there last year, and I was presenting this idea. Now we are going there as a team of people that actually work on something, and we will present that. So raise your voice, be part of something like this. You know, get interested in getting into unions. Once you get into unions, there's collaborative agreements. Be part of Svalbard Guide Association. You know, then you have much more access to information, and as a collective body, you can do something. Like in my research, maybe there's one thing that I learned like really a lot, that like only the collaboration can make, you know, all of us better. It's like I cannot go, at the end of the day I just produce my papers and like nobody's gonna read it. But like if you go out and like, you know, do something with what you have and have resources in every single company, in every single of you, then we can, you know, do something about it. And I think this is the end, so if we can answer the survey for tonight, that would be very great. We can take a picture. Thank you for my viewers. Yeah, someone has a question? No?
Well, can you share your findings on the session? Or do you have any focus?
Yes. So, you know, with the academia, like I've been doing my research for 3 years, and the publishment process is so long that it takes a year to publish an article. So, yeah, if you reach out to me, you can have that stuff for me.
We're gonna also post it later on the Svalbard Guide Association Facebook site, and then. All right, good. Then I think I'm gonna introduce one group that is out there very quickly that certifies guides, but they don't train guides. So this is something they, yeah, it's a bit of a unique thing maybe to do, because they don't offer the training, but they offer the assessment and they offer the certification. And maybe some of you have heard about them already. I'm just gonna open up the presentation. And that's gonna be quite short. Here we go. So they are called the Polar Tourism Guide Association. And they started basically more centered around cruise guiding. It was a group of guides more than 10 years ago that were working a lot in Antarctica. And they dealt with one of the issues that they were a group of experienced guides, and the industry started growing, and the industry started hiring new guides that had absolutely no experience, no training, and then expected the experienced guides to train them. And kind of with that, the whole thing started. And they realized that it's really hard to certify guides, that there aren't any certification internationally recognized out there, and that's where they kind of are born. And the PTGA is now internationally recognized, especially in the cruising industry. AECO is working with them together, and also a lot of companies. And the idea here is actually that as a guide, and you have experience, you have already certain skills, you can become part of the PTGA as a member, and if you then work, for example, for a company that works with the PTGA, they will have an assessor assess you, and then get a certification. So it's a work-based assessment, which is really nice because you do your daily job, and then someone joins you while you're out with the guides, with the guests, sorry, you're out with the guests, and then they look at the skills and so on, and hand you the certification later on. So just quickly in that way, I want to introduce them for the guides that are looking for an alternative, because you are very experienced and you don't want to do a whole school, you don't want to study for a year maybe, but you want to get certified. then the PTGA, for example, would be an idea. How does it work? So the PTGA has, as of now, 533 members. 420 of them are certified polar guides or senior polar guides. It's quite a big membership they have. And they are ISO accredited, which is really important, so they're internationally recognized. And also they do regular reviewing of their system, and they're improving it constantly, so they're relying on the guides giving feedback if the system works, and then they approve it. So it's made from guides for guides. It's quite important to think about that. Just to point it out again, the PTGA is not a training organization. They only provide the assessment at the end. So the guiding or the training students will be provided by the companies or training facilitation. Yes. How does it work? Let's come up with an example. You work for a company. Sadly, in Longyearbyen, we don't have a company yet that has joined the PTGA, but there are cruise companies in the summer. They are part of the PTGA. And then you join, you work for them while you're on the boat, and then there is an assessor on board. He joins you while you're out with the guests, and you ask for certain modules that you want to be looked at for, and then at the end of a couple of days, they say like, yeah, I could cross off those and those things, let's talk about this a little bit, and then, yeah, they kind of do it one by one. It's a quite time-intense procedure, and we are hoping that at the end of the year, we maybe are able to have a company joining us here in Longyearbyen. Why am I saying we? Because I was trained by the PTGA as an assessor, so I am assessing guides, but I cannot do that without the companies. So I need a company, so the company pays for it, basically. That's the idea. How does it work? So you become a member. It looks a bit complicated, but it's actually not so much. There is an entry level where you have different modules, and you need 5, or depends a bit on what your specialization is, of those entry levels to become a polar guide, and you need 60 days of working experience. So it's really important that you have already been working in the field. And they're adjusting it now. So which means it was made, the beginning of it all was cruise guiding, so a lot of Zodiac driving, but we're going to launch lead a snowmobile journey and also sea ice management. So they are developing new modules to adjust for guides in Svalbard. Also we have lead a dog sledding journey and so on and so on. Basically, you start with those ones. It's the basics that every guide, it doesn't matter in what specialization you work in, has to have. And then from there, if you want to, you can apply later on to become a senior polar guide. So it's a very easy kind of concept. The good news is that the company that have joined this kind of idea, they see a huge improvement in the quality of the guides, and they pay more. So if you have the PTGA, if you are PTGA assessed, you get more money, which is of course always a nice thing to have. So just as an encouragement, if you want to think about signing some of it. Any questions? Yeah?
Is there talk about using this as well in Longyearbyen for certifying guides?
Not this. Good question. So when we had the talks up at semester with the working group, the fun part was that they invited someone from the government that has invested a lot of time in the last 10 years to look for international recognized certifications, which they want to lean onto, and they came up with that by themselves. So they didn't even have to show them that, which was really nice. So they came up with it and said like, yeah, but that's already something and we need to look at it, and which means they also will make sure that when the guide certification eventually will be ready, that this is adapted. Like you can, if you are PTGA certified, you apply to Sysselmann or Sysselmester, and then they will already cross off certain modules because you're already ticking the right boxes. So they will definitely, they have to, because it's so internationally recognized. So in a way, it's a very good thing to do that now. because it maybe makes it way easier for you later to get your license to work in Svalbard.
What's the possibility for us to do that now though then? Because we just have to wait for the companies to kind of be like, okay, yes, we want to be part of PTGA, but
yeah, maybe
they're like, okay,
companies.
well, we don't want to spend any money, we have guides anyway now.
Yeah, but maybe not for much longer.
Yeah.
So that's like the companies will need to think about that, because sometimes the government comes up with solutions like, oh yeah, by the way, from next month onwards, it's only allowed to have mandatory, not like that crazy. But it might be a bit of a surprise that from January next year, we'll have to have the mandatory guide certification. And then the companies will have the issue, how do I certify so fast my guides? Because there's no company in town. The Arctic Safety Center has no chance to take 70, 100, 200, 300 guides and educate them, certify them. It's just not possible. They have they can't even run the courses now. They have 50 people in the courses, and that's all they do. And same with ANG. ANG is a great program, I did it myself, but it's only about 10 international guides that join, maybe 15 if you're lucky. And then very few of them stay. So it's just not enough to be able to certify everyone in a shorter amount of time.
And they still need to do the paperwork. They also need to do the paperwork.
Yes, but that's their problem. So that's going to be interesting because, of course, a lot of people will apply, a lot of guides will apply with whatever courses they have, and then there is someone at Systemester that has to work through those applications, and the guides that apply for their rifle license maybe knows that it can take some time to get the yes or no. So I'm very curious how they're planning to deal with that, because that's a bit more difficult than a rifle license. Because you're all very, like, everyone has done different courses, so it's a bit more challenging. Yeah. Good, then we can go forward, because the future, what we are trying just to encourage you is, of course, just as an idea, they're launching e-learning platforms on the PTGA website that you can join to prepare for courses. It's very nice, so they have that open. And also they're always open for new ideas, contact them, they're super open. And they want to create a room for you to be able, yeah, maybe if people want to be assessors. So if you're a guide and you are feeling comfortable in the position that you are in, like in your field of specialization, dog mushing or whatever it is, maybe you want to be trained as an assessor. It's a course you have to take, you have to do a lot of tests and so on, it's a bit of a process, but it makes it very valuable for your company, and it's fun as well. It's very, you learn a lot. It's a very interesting way to go that direction. And of course, if you want to know more, you can check out the website. Any more questions? So
Not a question, but I don't think it's so time consuming, like you said. So it's not such a difficult thing. I know that you know, as well as me, I'm also an assessor of this, but it's simply just to show that you know what you know. And that's the minimum. You show that you know this, and that's it. And then we write it down, and that's enough. So it's kind of the minimum time you can spend on this to show that you know what you know.
Yeah. That's kind of what I meant with the work-based assessment. You just do your thing. For example, if you want to, they have this leading a hike. So when there's a guide that is, a hiking guide, I think lead a hike in non-technical terrain, but they also have lead a journey in technical terrain. They would just call me and say, like, hi, Franka, I have a hike tomorrow. I'm going up to Sarkophagen. Can you join? I join. And then at the end, I can hook off quite a lot of them. I can hook up navigation, maybe even communication, so you can do a lot of
navigation on Sarkophagen.
If you talk to them. So it's a very easy approach to do it, but the companies have to support you. You can, of course, also pay for it yourself, but that is maybe not the option. I would encourage you to find a solution with your companies, because also for the companies, you could do assessments with multiple guides at the same time. Yeah. Good. And then we're nearly, it's quite late. I don't know if Marius can do the last little part in a few minutes, or yeah. Any questions to that? Otherwise, we're talking about a very important topic as well, and that's collective agreements from the union. So that's how we are really hoping with the collective agreements to do a big change, which reminds me of one thing. Svalbard is a bit of a unique thing because we're so disconnected from the mainland. And regarding the guide certification, I just had a phone call from a friend, and he said they are working on a national guide certification in Norway since many years, and they're now pushing forward to it, and Svalbard will be the testing platform. So that's again a thing where I know it will come. So they will push as fast as possible to have this guide certification mandatory on Svalbard to have a test place for the planned guide certification in Norway and in all of Norway. Yeah. Okay.
It's getting late, and I'm going to try to be as quick as I can. So before COVID, we worked a bit on establishing collective agreements for guiding here on Svalbard. And we got pretty far in the process as well. We had some negotiations with NHO, which is the employers' organization. So, for example, Treacherous is a member of NHO, Svalbard Wildlife is a member of NHO, Base Camp is a member of NHO, probably many of the other companies as well. So we had meetings with the representatives in NHO, trying to figure out the form of collective agreement that could be established for Arctic nature guides here on Svalbard. Because there doesn't exist any collective agreements that were usable from the already existing agreements. So then there was COVID and collapsed as well as the other things, and we have to start this process again. So we're not starting from scratch, we'll pick it up where we left it. But I was interested in hearing your views on the matter, because when we started the work, we were focused on getting as many regulations as possible in regards to working hours, overtime pay, compensation, and things. While NHO is interested in having as little regulations as possible, of course. But we are in agreement that there needs to be collective agreements because it makes the possibilities to make local agreements regarding working hours better. You can stretch the limits a bit further when you have a local union in the working place and you have the union representative who can speak on behalf of his or her colleagues. So the maximum limits can be stretched. And this is a good thing because then you can operate legally for the more extreme trips that you take people on. So it's both in your interests and the company's interest to establish collective agreements for your parties, because then you as a collective on your place of work can cooperate, discuss, and speak as a union towards your employer and establish the cooperation for the guides as a group towards the employer in comparison to each of you cooperating with your employer. So this is one important thing. I feel it's been like a theme of this conference as well, to like cooperate between yourself, not just work for yourself. And this is something that we want to make happen now, and we're ready to start the work again. And for this to happen, we will start the contact with NHO when I get back now. But I'm curious as to what are the things that you need to be in a collective agreement. Is it like payment regulation? Is it working hours? What are the main issues? Or are you happy with, for example, more like a framework agreement stating the rules of negotiations, cooperation between the workers and the employer? On what kind of detail level does these agreements needs to be? Because it's no secret that NHO wants as little regulations as possible. We traditionally want as much regulated as possible. But I think for this group, perhaps could be smart to find somewhere in the middle here. You're not working in a shop, you're not working like in a place where it's easy to have things regulated. It's much more, your days out in the field are more varied. Perhaps there needs to be some space for different systems that you can locally find at the workplace in cooperation with your employers. I'm not sure. So I was wondering if you had some input as to that. And also if there is even interest for getting the collective agreements in place. Because if it's not something that you want, then you will work on it. And regardless of collective agreements or not, I still would recommend you to form local unions in your workplaces. Of course, I'm working for unions, so it's easy for me to say, but the offering we have to you as guides, I think, is quite unique, where we use resources and money to help you as far as we can, using lawyers. We had several cases where we had lawyers for several months going on to try to sort out some issues that we have. And I think we have a good track record here on Svalbard in those rare cases that we have had to involve ourselves, use resources. So that's, I know it's late.
So shy.
Yeah, but it's been working, and the cooperation we've had with the Svalbard Guide Association has been very good. And I think it's important that you join a union so you have that insurance for yourself if something goes wrong.
I think we can maybe also put that in the questionnaire, what you would like to see to change, like if it's more about the working hours or you just want to have it compensated when you work 12 hours, if you don't really mind about the 12 hours but you would like to see it at the end on the paycheck, or if you work overtime for high season month, or if you, what you need kind of from the union to give you a better feeling at the end of the day, a fair, like maybe even just it's fair for you to see how much money you should get. What's your salary at the end? Is it all up to you discussing it with your boss, or should there be a more open salary concept? So kind of, if you're not very good to fight for salary, you get very little pay, and if you're very good, you get very high pay. Might be also not so nice. So let Marius know.
And you have gotten the green cards, and there is contact information for my office. You can just call that number, or if you send an email, then I will get it directly. So just let me know what you think, and I will take that into consideration when we continue the negotiations with NHO. Because I think one of the problems last time was that we started working or demanding collective agreements without having the collective agreements in place. So now I want to reverse the order. I want to ensure that we have the collective agreements, and I want to ensure that we have the local unions, and then we can just put forward the demands for collective agreements when the local unions vote up. don't be afraid to contact us if there's any. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy. And I'm very happy that so many could come to this conference and that we got it back on track. I'm surprised. I ordered for 50 people, so it's my fault that some chairs. I didn't imagine that 70 people would come, but that's very good. Very good.
So also the Svalbard Guide Association, we don't have funds in any way really, so we rely on Håkon to finance this conference every year. So we thank you for making it possible for all of us to come together, and also thank you for the coffee and the food. So that was very nice.
Yeah, sorry.
As Mario said, thank you so much for coming. It was really a very nice surprise that so many came. And maybe we can take this as a nice starting point to meet more often. I know it's really difficult for the guides in the high season, but maybe we can come up with something. Maybe we can ask the Husky Cafe if they open up extra 2 hours in an evening or something. Like we need to get creative, but if we want to create a platform where we can share information, come up with ideas. Be kind of the one that creates room for us. I don't think we have the money to borrow the conference room every week, but something. And approach us. You have a Husky Cafe? I like that. No, but yeah, thank you so much for joining. And also please, if you want to be part of the Svalbard Guide Association, and let us know. There's so much to do. No, but it would be great not to kind of have it just Sylvia and me do the whole thing. We need more input, we need more ideas, we need other perspectives. So it would be also great if Norwegians would step up to the task. And I always hear, yeah, you're not Norwegian, so that's why you're not invited. So it would be great if we had a Norwegian that we could just push to all the Norwegian meetings. No, but something like this would be great. Thank you so much.